Eccomi con te, mio amore. Eccomi. Per sempre sono io tuo mio amore. Per sempre insieme. Eccomi, finalmente eccomi. Ti amo, ti amo, ti amo. I am here with you, my love. I am here, I am here. Forever, I am yours, my love. Forever, together. I am here, finally I am here. I love you, I love you, I love you.
Hello and welcome to Storytelling with Puck. We will, as always, start with a story.
Home. The humanoid was lost, lonely, and feeling confused as to if it had made the right choice. Was moving halfway across the world the right choice? How would it find a way to fit in this foreign land? Gently, it explored the lands around its dwelling, venturing further and further into the unknown. Loneliness set in. The days began to have a heavier feel the longer it explored and tried to find a way to settle into this new foreign land. A few weeks after arriving, it was venturing up a street in a place that it had never visited before in its exploration, and it came across a strange and odd establishment. This location was filled with humanoids that spoke a language it understood. Phrases like, in response, I roll a d20, where are the paints? Tap this mana to get. These board games are more cooperative, were all heard. The humanoid was filled with hope and joy, but also a bit of fear and anxiety. Would it be accepted into this place? It spoke a slightly different dialect, but the same language. Tentatively, it entered the space, and as a few of those that were there looked up at it, it gently asked, is there space for one more? I don't have a deck with me. The proprietor of the establishment stood up and came across to shake hands. All are welcome here, my friend. Let's get you set up with a playmat and a loan deck. Sitting in that space, surrounded by its fellow geeks, the humanoid, for the very first time, felt like this new land might just be home. Many hours later, a sense of peace had descended, and it was sure, yes, with this kind of community, it might just have found home.
Thank you to Rory Berry for that particular story. He's a brilliant storyteller and has managed to join for quite a few of the Storytelling with Puck sessions. And thank you for reading this. I read it very well. Welcome, everybody, to Keep the Fire Burning, the final session of Storytelling with Puck 2024. You now all have the possibility of unmuting yourselves. So come on, don't just listen to my voice.
Hi.
Say hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
So as mentioned, yeah, this is the final session, sadly, of Storytelling with Puck. But we have absolutely loved all of your stories this week. We have listened to you, we have read you, and we're just kind of excited by getting to grips with everything that you guys have done. But we didn't want to end on a just let it burn out. So that's why we call this Keep the Fire Burning. It's all about making sure that you guys continue to tell stories, both in life and in business, as you go forward, because there is a lot of power to stories in business. And I know that we have a few people in here who do use them in business, so we might come to you later to give us a few of your thoughts as well. But for tonight, we are doing the usual Zoom evenings, which means that we will be sharing lots of stories, and I hope that you guys might have one or two that you want to share as well.
So while you all build up some Dutch courage, we'll pass it over to Stefano to read another story that was shared this week by Trisha, who I think has joined us maybe for the past 6 years.
Yeah, I think she might have been there since the very beginning. So yeah, she's not able to make the Zoom tonight, so we thought we would take her story and read it for her. But I would never do the justice of the way that she would read it. But hopefully, it would still come across with what she's trying to say. The robot vacuum cleaner sounded like thunder on the wooden floorboards of the flat above. Her upstairs neighbour was crazy for housework. She, however, was not. She let her book drop into her lap and let her mind wander aimlessly. She had a theory about her rebellious attitude to housework. The rebellion was seeded in her childhood. In hindsight, she realized that her mother was a shining example of the perfect housewives, smiling out of the 1960s magazines. If her mother had been happy, none of this would matter. But she had never believed her mother was happy in life. She therefore equated housework with unhappiness. As the rumbling robot continued to dust suck, she pressed play on an embedded childhood memory that might have seeded this belief. It was Christmas. She was with her mother in her aunt's kitchen. Tipsy laughter leaped from the nearby sitting room where her cousins and jovial uncle were playing silly games. No games for her and her mother. Whilst opting to do some post-lunch washing up, her mother had spotted a chaotic kitchen cupboard that needed attention. From an innocent bystander, she became an ally for her mother. This is greasy and messy, let's clean it up. She was puzzled, but accepted the damp cloth. It wasn't even her mother's kitchen. Chocolates awaited in the other room. Was this really her mother's idea of a Merry Christmas? Her mind snapped back to the present moment. As the book slipped from her lap to the dusty floor. Upstairs, the sound of furniture being moved, no doubt to dust the skirting boards. She had a childlike wish. Please, could I travel back to that kitchen scene and change the story? Mum, let's leave the saucepans to have fun in their muddy, tangled jungle. Come with me. Let's play charades. You're good at charades. You're right. Why waste this moment? Give me a hug. Let's go play. And we encourage you all to come and play this evening. What are your thoughts on some of those stories that we've read to you at the beginning?
I really like the last one because I think, especially those of us who may be a little older, kind of have thoughts like that more often. Especially if we don't have our parents anymore. So it's a little nostalgic, a little melancholy.
I also like how you can take maybe just one small incident of cleaning the kitchen and bring so much depth, and you hear a lot about their relationship just from a very small story. So it's when we talk to people about the power of stories and people say, oh, I don't have any stories, it's literally, it can be a moment or a very small thing like cleaning out the kitchen cupboard.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
much. Very much.
I mean,
That's what
we've
I got from
spoken
it
a
as
lot
well.
about this, haven't we, before, that a lot of people say they don't have any stories because I think they're looking for something too big,
Yeah.
too impressive. And it's actually, there's almost a strange inverse relationship between the size of the incident and the lesson that can be drawn from it and the point that you can make from it. But I just think it takes a certain acuity to see those little things and see there's meaning in them.
Mm-hmm. Which I have to say Trisha does exceptionally well. There's almost always with her stories, she is a perfect example of what we're trying to explain here with the way that she does that. She often digs into a moment. I remember a story she did a couple of years ago, which I think was about her daughter, and it was just about an airport incident. But the story was so much bigger than the airport incident. It almost encapsulated a lifetime all within the space of again a LinkedIn post, which is kind of incredible when you when you think about it, because to me it meant so much as somebody who has been the person in the airport leaving my whole family behind, and then to other people it would be the person who's got somebody leaving them as they I was going to say escape, maybe that's not the right word, as they flee in an airport. I shouldn't say escape.
I think the word escape says a lot about the trip that you went on anyway.
But yeah, it's powerful. It's really powerful. So Gary, I think you were about to say something as well. Then it's the Zoom problem that we can never.
That's all right. I was just agreeing that it's like the inspiration or the potential for stories is around everywhere, like 24/7, and it's like radio waves, but you need a radio to hear them, kind of, and it's like, yeah, and it's just there's obviously a storytelling kind of frame of mind that would see something there and that would pick up on something there and make something from it. And
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Sorry, we're just trying to take the spotlight off us. whilst we're
yeah, I was
listening
thinking like, because before when someone spoke, the camera switched to them and it stayed on you. And I don't know if that's your end or my end.
No, so what we usually do, yeah, is we get a spotlight onto whoever's telling the story, and then we find a way to get that spotlight taken off, so that we can have a gallery and everyone can see it. But there you go. That should now work a little bit better. I think we'd forgotten a few of the usual technical bits that we do at the beginning, so it didn't work out as it should have done. But yeah, no, I mean it's such a good point. And again, if we go, again, I think a lot of these stories, again, thinking about specific moments, sometimes they can be wider moments. If we go back to Rory's story as well, he was focusing on a slightly larger period of time, but it was still about the moment that he landed in a foreign country and the moment that he had to make a whole new home and set up. And I think we've got quite a few people in here who have at some point in time left left where they grew up and left family and moved somewhere else. And it can feel like you're the alien, it can feel like you're the humanoid.
I definitely felt that.
You moved from the States, John. That's right, isn't it?
Sorry.
So you moved from the States, right? You moved from the
I
US.
did. I moved from the States. Yeah, I'm sorry with Zoom sound quality. I thought it sounded like you said I moved from space, and I was like, no, from this planet. But it feels
Sorry,
like I moved
Yeah.
from space. Yeah. No, because
Yeah.
Was it Earth or Jupiter? I can never remember.
it was Saturn. Damn it, it was Saturn on the
Saturn.
ring.
Sorry. I always forget.
Yeah, man.
I
My
suppose
program.
literally you did move from space.
But no, it is weird. Like my brothers were so shocked when I moved here. Like when I told one of my brothers that I was moving here with my husband, he said, "But it's like so permanent." And I was like, "No, it's not. I mean, like if I want to come back, I'm allowed to come back." But I think he imagined like a big iron door, that like slams shut behind you when you leave.
Somebody's put you in the prison of the Netherlands and locked the key, and locked you away, threw away the key.
No key necessary. I'm fine.
Yeah, it's a pretty good prison.
Yeah, I'll take it. But yeah, it is. It's. I'm always fascinated by people that are the opposite. Like I have so many friends that never left our little town. That we grew up in. Like they've never been out of the country, even vacation. It's like they're happy, but I don't know. It's a different mindset.
Yeah, it is a different mindset. Again, it's I guess up to the individual what you take to and how you enjoy life. We are definitely movers, and we travelers and go around. But I know that it's different for everyone as to what you enjoy and what you don't. But and I know a lot of people prefer to travel periodically and go on shorter trips and all of that sort of stuff as well. So I guess it's whatever floats your boat. But for us, we like to be in a new world and meet new people.
Yeah, exactly.
That's our way of doing things. Yeah.
Well, a lot of Americans, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like there is I would say a subset of Americans that when they travel, they don't want to meet anybody new. They only want to see like other Americans or like not have to have any exposure to the culture.
Yeah, that's not just Americans. I have to say that's. I think that it depends on depends on the mindset of the person who's going around. But yeah. On that note, and it doesn't have to be about travel, but I'm sure that you guys might have some. Does anybody have a story they would like to share? It could be about travel, it could be about a particular moment in time that sparked something for them, or it could be completely random. But does anybody have anything they'd like to share?
I have a travel story.
I thought you might.
It's not the one I told you before about the book on the plane. So I went recently to watch Napoleon in Manchester because John, you don't know me yet, but I live just about 20 miles south of Manchester in the UK. So I saw it with a friend. It's an amazing movie. It's a long movie, but really worthwhile sitting down through it. It's fantastic. And I was quite late coming back, and I get the train back, and it's the late train. It's the last train home, which is full of drunkards because they've been partying in Manchester, and it's the final. And goodness knows what happens if they miss the last train. They'll have that, maybe sleep in a bus shelter or find somewhere cheap to stay. But anyway, it was full of drunken people. But the person I was sitting next to actually wasn't a drunken person. He was probably 25 years of age. He had his ear pods in. He was presumably listening to music. He's clearly not of my generation, but I've just sat with him on a two-seater. And we had the entire journey home without him saying a word. And then just before we get to the final stop, he takes his earbuds out and he looks at me and he said, "Do I know you from somewhere?" Now, that's the type of thing I would probably say to other people, but for a 25-year-old to say it to an old guy like me, I was quite taken aback. And I looked at him and I didn't recognize him. And I'm racking my brains. When people think they know you, but you can't recognize them, it's very frustrating. So I threw him all these bones. I said, "Well, I used to run the local golf club." No, it's not that. Well, I do a lot of stuff around presenting and stuff. No, it's not that. Well, I probably see me, working in cafes. No, I don't go into cafes. So all these bones, nothing, drew a blank. And then it went quiet. There was an awkward silence, maybe 5-10 minutes until the train's about to pull in. And then I just happened to make small talk and said, "Well, I've just been to see Napoleon in Manchester." He said, "Oh, so have I." I said, well, really? Well, which cinema did you go? Or to the print works? Well, that's where I was. So he's probably seen me walking out of the cinema. So he's seen me half an hour before, but that's presumably the only place he's ever seen me before. So anyway, we're about to pull into the final stop. And then I get up to go. And then these drunken ladies, there's 5 drunken women in the seats just next to us. And one of them stands up and says, do I know you from somewhere? And I thought, oh, I said, well, I don't know. I vaguely recognized her. I didn't recognize the young guy, but I recognized her from somewhere. And she said, are you a teacher? I said, well, not real, kind of, but not really. My daughter's a proper teacher. I'm not a teacher, really. She said, are you sure you're not a teacher? I said, no, I don't think I'm a teacher. And then I finally recognized her. She used to run the creche when I used to run that golf club. And I think she's actually looked after my daughter when she was little in the creche. So that was that solved. So within the space of 10 minutes, I had these strangers claiming that they knew me from somewhere. And just that strange things happen to me on journeys. That's my modest story.
I love that. I love that. That's so cool.
Oh, actually, that's brilliant. I also love the fact that you had 2 in the space of one journey as well, and one of them was maybe a little bit more genuine than the other, actually say. But also I don't know if it plays to your ego a little bit that you were like, oh, it must be something that I've done with
But I mean, I used to run golf clubs and I do a lot of public speaking. So people see you because you're in a exposed situation, but it's harder for you to remember the other people sometimes. And I guess my daughter's the same because she teaches. She's always at the front of the class. She's visible. And it must be hard for her to remember all the individual pupils that gone through her classes.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's true. And I I had not quite the same kind of incident because it didn't evolve. There wasn't a full conversation, but I was sitting in a cafe maybe about 2 or 3 months ago, and was a group of must have been uni students, maybe 21, 22-year-old ladies who just kept on staring across at me, and I actively caught one of them holding their camera up and filming me. And I was just like, what are you doing? But I wasn't brave enough to say anything. I just kind of hid my face. Just like, why are you filming? So I'm guessing they probably confused me with somebody. I don't expect them to know who I am. I'm guessing I must look like someone else, and they were like, "He really looks like this person," so I'm going to film him.
But I mean, actually, just before I went to the cinema, I went with a friend of mine, and we went for dinner beforehand into a tapas place. And while we were sitting waiting to order, there was a woman who was staring at me from about 3 or 4 tables down in the restaurant. She's staring at me, and I'm looking at her thinking, do I recognize her from somewhere? And I was about to wave, one of these sort of half-hearted waves when you're not quite sure whether you know them or not. It's sort of your hand there barely raises up. And my friend put my hand down and she says, no, she's looking at the specials board behind you.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh my God.
Anybody else had any moments of fame or half fame?
I actually have a quick comment. Hi, Stefan. Hi, Ian. Great to be here. Sorry I'm late, but I will say, Andrew, I totally liked how comfortable he was delivering that story. And this is energy and everything. So you like pulled us into the story. So you told it very well. I don't know if you had planned to tell the story or if it was spontaneous, but
I'm a frustrated actor, Sharon.
Oh, okay, that explains it. But your delivery
no one
was
would ever
amazing.
hire me to be an actor, so I have to find another way.
I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Anyone else then with moments of fame, or are we all too shy, or oh, the person I'm about to
I've got one that's I've got quite a modest one, which is just many years ago in my old life. I worked in sales, well, pre-sales really. It was kind of setting up sales meetings, and it was my job. and the job of the people I worked with to speak to small business owners and persuade them to part with their small business software and spend thousands on bigger stuff. So anyway, initially getting to speak to people was notoriously difficult. And I remember once asking to speak to someone, and she said, "Okay, I'm just putting you through now." And I was like, "Oh, that's unusually easy." And I went through and I was talking to this guy for a little while, and then he said, "I'm sorry, I thought it was someone else." And he told me that he had his best friend was called Gary Nightingale. So, which is why his PA had put me through, but the call didn't last much longer after that. So about that for a long time. It suddenly came to me. It's such because it's not a common name. So
you should have said, "Yeah, it's me. I've switched jobs, and I really need your help. I'm trying to sell this stuff, and I can't get rid of it." It could have got a quick
story
sale.
recently that Tom, was it Tom Holland or Tom Hollander? Who's the young guy who plays Spider-Man?
I think
This
he
is
did.
the problem. Nobody can remember, Andrew, because I know the story you're about
He
to
had
tell.
a
Right, yeah,
massive paycheck. He had a massive paycheck, didn't he, from his Spider-Man role? And they sent it to the actor who's called Tom Holland, I think.
Yeah. Tom, I think it was Tom Hollander got the paycheck for Tom Holland.
That's right.
Yeah, and I've never heard of Tom Hollander until this happened, but
he's quite well known in the UK as an actor, but he's obviously not as famous worldwide as the younger guy.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think he's quite as famous as Spider-Man, but he's he's definitely he's well known on this part of the world. Oh, brilliant! Absolutely brilliant. So the stories of fame are one side of things, but how about any other moments in time or any other stories that even I know some of you guys maybe have planned or brought something with you that you would like to share today? Does anybody have anything they would like to? Have you put your brave pants on and would like to share something?
I can read something for you all, but it definitely has nothing to do with time and travel. I just figure Valentine's is next week, and I'm figuring that you all have been loved, love somebody, knows about love. And so maybe I thought I would share these. They're really very, very short poems. And you know, tweaking here and there, and they'll be knocked into shape in the future. So how about that? Go ahead. Shall I?
Sounds wonderful, Sharon. Go for it.
All right. So the first one, and the titles are space holders. They'll be changed, tweaked. The first title, the first little poem it's entitled Game. Ours must be a game, with me clutching your slacks, never your face to tame. So that should be catching. See, not all of us have really legible handwriting, and I'm guilty. So I want to read that again. The title is Game. It says, ours must be a game, with me catching your slacks, never your face to tame. And then the second little one, the title is called Melt. Your words, so lovely, fall like snow, commingling beauty with uncertainty, when beauty should be eternal, never falling to melt new days. Here's another little one. It's called Dew. Your love is fresh dew on yearning lips to lick at dawn and own new days. And then here's the last one, right? The title is Care, at least for now. This man loves me with copious words. I love you, he says. I believe. This man loves me unconditionally. I don't care, he says, about your ills. This man loves me lustfully, with licentious words, spurring my recoil from impetuous love. That's it, guys.
Sharon, they're all brilliant. It's hard to gain focus on on just one of them, but as you say, they're all about the different forms of love, which is incredible. What did you guys all take from those? What did you? I'm guessing you can picture or put yourself in some of the moments that Sharon was describing there.
I like the line about fresh dew.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
was good. And it was quite sort of sensual, and then the last one was quite funny.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were beautifully read, Sharon. Really, really beautifully read. And the word lips, I think lips is it's a sensual word. It's a beautiful word to get your tongue around. It's really, no, it was beautiful, beautiful.
The thing that struck me was copious words, because I think we've all had that boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, big talkers.
Don't look at me.
Even husbands too, and wives too.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it was funny because I kind of got stuck there because it kind of took me down memory lane a little bit. So I was kind of like down there with the copious words boyfriends, you know. But that definitely hit a chord.
Yeah, I loved how they kind of it's almost like a mini collection of the same theme, but they all have a different kind of tone and style. And I'm very jealous that in just a few lines you can bring us somewhere. Because when I try to write, I normally get about 2 lines in and then get stuck and then end up writing 2 pages. So I need to learn your craft of writing something in a few lines to get across the feelings.
That's because you're a novelist or you're great at short stories, and that's a good thing.
Who knows? Who knows?
I'm a big fan of jazz music. I know you're a bit of a musician as well, Stefano. And there's a great series where Oscar Peterson plays alongside Count Basie, and Count Basie was a very minimalist style. You know, there's just gaps, but the gaps are all in the right places. Mm-hmm. So he actually communicates so much with relatively few notes and with seemingly very little effort as well, but it's incredibly skillful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember being, and this was just in school, being taught in a music lesson, one of the first lessons, well, maybe not one of the first lessons, but once you go a little bit further into music lessons, was to understand the power of silence, to understand that beat where you just shut up and let everything else around that moment of silence be absorbed. It's, I think in spoken communication, it's important too, but especially in music, it's so powerful.
Yeah, so now in my neck of the woods, because I'm a singer, and so working with students especially that are starting out have a really hard time with silence or a really hard time with a long rest. They want to fill it with something, and it's really hard for them to just be still or let the word that they've just said sink in, let it land. So yeah, it's interesting what you can do with just one little second of silence.
But I think it's the same in conversation as well, John, or in presenting. People are very uncomfortable with silences. They feel they have to fill it with something. And then they do lots of ums and ers, and because they're just uncomfortable with the gap.
Exactly. Yeah, they want something instead of
I thought I'd better be quiet then.
I love how nobody wanted to say anything in that moment. None of us are uncomfortable. I swear, we're not uncomfortable. We're fine with silence, okay? Just leave us alone. We're okay with it.
It's all good.
It's like if you've ever been with somebody and they talk about the importance of eye contact, suddenly you become very nervous about whether your eyes are pointing in the right direction.
Exactly. Like, can I look away to eat my soup?
That could be a little bit creepy. It's like,
Yeah.
I've actually done that. I've teased my husband before because he'll say, like, you're not paying attention to me. So I'll say, fine, I will give you my undivided attention forever from now on. And I just stare at him, and he's like, he sees the peril of undivided attention.
Okay, I'll choose my words more carefully next time. It's probably what. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe a bit more attention, but not quite that much.
Right. Really, not your undivided attention forevermore, because that might be. I just heard something. I'm gonna have to try to remember this little anecdote about this, but it was something like they were talking about how wonderful their partner was and how now they're never alone. And I thought to myself, God, not even for a second. Like, it's great to be together, but we all need to be alone momentarily.
Yeah. You want to see how far that goes. Maybe because we're on a YouTube, I won't go into too much detail of where that could go. But yeah, so
like, we all need to
could be some.
Like, please don't give me your undivided attention forever now.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. So, does anybody have anything else along those themes, or again, it doesn't have to be along those themes at all, that they would like to share? A story that maybe we've seen during the week, or even something new that we haven't seen.
Hi, hello everyone. I'd actually like to continue the poem streak, and and read the poem that I shared today on LinkedIn just a couple of hours ago, actually. So it's fresh out of the oven. It's called Tired. It's when you run after life. Sometimes I think we all tend to do this sometimes, and we get tired. So here goes. I've got to get over this hill. I've got to climb over that mountain. Quick, there's no time to kill. Come on, let's drink from the fountain that can make me feel alive again. I forgot to pick up the pieces I know I left somewhere along the way, but there's no time for caprices. Maybe the end is near, so I cannot sway. Run fast, no time to slow down. Run over, I am no clown. Run for, this is my cue. Run more, I've got some catching up to do. I just want to crawl somewhere and rest, but I can't. I'm still put to the test. I cry out, how much more? Who knows, maybe I'm done for, but no, there's plenty more to explore.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel my heart beating faster as you were saying run. For start of 4 lines in a row, I was like, I'm trying to chase that spot. Sorry, Gary, go on.
I saw it earlier, and it was good to hear you read it out. Actually, it just had this kind of just this frantic feel to it. This but there's nothing in it about what's being chased exactly. And it's just I guess everyone's got their own thing that they can put in there.
Yeah, exactly. It's for everyone to put themselves in the scene and fill in the gaps.
I think I think for sure
Sorry, go on.
Go on, Sharon. Sorry, I think there was a delay on the line, so you were both talking. And Gary said to go on. So off you go, Sharon.
No, I was just adding that yes, it's a poem that we all can relate to. We hear Julia reading it and we're like, yes, I am there, have been there. We're always chasing something, running from something, comparing the past with the present and the future. But just go on. If not running, walk on and realize your dreams and live life.
Beautifully said. Yeah.
And it was like it was a nice contrast to talking before about the silence. It was almost like there was no silence allowed in that.
Yeah, yeah. Like I actually, the director in me thought to myself, if I were to read that poem, if I were to put a little pause after each line, would it change the way it lands? You know, or was that the point? Was that we're running? So there are no pauses.
Yeah, I think that would change. That would be kind of jarring, I think.
Right, yeah, exactly. Well, it's because you can't keep up, right? Like if you stop, then you're going to get behind.
Almost the idea is if instead of doing 100 meters, you're doing 110-meter hurdles, but you don't jump.
Yeah, yeah.
You just go straight into the hurdle. That kind of scenario.
Yeah, they were a good. That was a good contrast talking about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant story, Yulia. Thank you. Poem, shall I say? But I guess that's the point, actually, and something we talk about every time we have one of these calls is that stories can come in so many different forms. At the beginning, some of you who are here would have seen the piece I played for my dad's funeral called Reunited, and Gary has played some musical pieces as well this week, which have told a story, but he's put the words onto the page, and then we've had the poetry that quite a few of us have put out there, and then the more traditional story forms, the standard text, I guess, that you put onto the page. And I think there's so many different ways you can express a story, but the main idea behind it is that you make someone feel. And I at least for me anyway, every single one of the stories that you guys have told so far has definitely made me feel something, whether it's I've been laughing or I've been crying probably too many times this week, or felt joy or whatever it is. It's I think that's where the power of story lies. Andrew, I'm going to pick on you a little bit here because your storytelling prowess in business, and I know that you speak to people like PwC and lots of other major companies around the globe about why storytelling matters in business. And I was just thinking about how we're all making each other feel through these stories. But when you bring that into a business context, how can we relate?
Well, I'll actually just mention something that's not necessarily in the business context, but something that's actually touched the nation here in the UK. We've had a scandal in the UK that's been going on for over 20 years, and this is the post office. John, you're nodding. Has this story reached you?
It has. We've been following it with interest, and now there's a TV show about it, right?
Yeah, so ITV, one of the major channels here, ran a 4-part drama series that sort of dramatized the whole sorry episode, and it's absolutely captured the nation's attention to the point where the government has felt under great pressure to then act and do something about it. So this was so Sharon, if you're not familiar with this is where the sub postmasters and mistresses, who were the small people who used to run the local post office, and were accused of fraud and stealing money because the computer system which was installed across all of the UK actually was faulty. But rather than investigate the technology being at fault, there was an assumption that the postmasters and mistresses were criminals. And they were investigated very, very vigorously. And some of them went to jail. And 1 or 2 of them committed suicide because it absolutely ruined their lives. And now there's an enormous sort of compensation campaign, to right the wrong and to bring to account the people who are responsible for incorrectly pursuing those criminal investigations. But I think although it's a sort of a tragic and an awful story, it illustrates how the dramatization of something and the humanization of something actually makes it much more powerful, and it makes us feel, something that we wouldn't have felt before when it was described in a very abstract way. And I think this is the lesson that I try and teach businesses, is that you can communicate in a very rational, factual, logical way, but it just leaves people cold. And in the corporate world, they are notorious for using lots of terminology, which again is very abstract and cold in nature. And I think it just leaves people distanced from what those things actually mean and the way that they really affect people. So when you start to humanize something which is otherwise described in that abstract way, it really touches people. And so the business people that I work with know that there's a shortcoming in their communication style, but they don't find it easy to storyfy or humanize it because it's just not within their nature to do it. And lots of my clients work in risk-averse industries like the professions, where they're just comfortable using corporate speak and, describing things in that very cold way. So I know it's a very convoluted answer to your question, Stefano.
It was a perfect answer to the question, Andrew. I think it explains it. And actually, what you did there is exactly what I encourage, and we encourage our clients to do as well, is to use stories from the outside world to apply them to business. When you're telling a story, it can be directly about the business that you're in, but sometimes, depending on who you're speaking to in your audience, you can find it hard to get them absorbed or engaged. And you mentioned humanized there. And I think that's something we have to remember. The people you're talking to are not robots, at least not yet. Give it another 10 years. The people that you're talking to right now are currently, please, for now, still human. And if we're talking to humans, then we need to talk to them on a human level. We need to connect with them in a way that they can say, oh yeah, I watched. Sorry, Andrew, I wasn't watching you directly when you were telling that story, and you mentioned about the post office. I was watching everybody else because I was watching everybody else nod their heads, and one or two people looking interested but not sure, and everyone else going, "Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from," and that is what you need to capture when you're telling a good story, whether it's written or whether it's verbal. Because if you can get people nodding their heads, suddenly they're with you, they're engaged. And if by the end of that story, you then have a message for them which says, now go away and do X, which is related to your business, it's much easier to give them that message than to start a story with, please buy my stuff. So thank you for sharing.
There's a very interesting pushback or resistance that I guess sometimes get to storytelling in business. And that is that, oh, well, the people I deal with have very short attention spans. They just want you to get straight to the point. They haven't got time for fluffery. And I think that, I've thought long and hard about the best way of countering that. And I'm sure you've all got some views on this. But I think it misunderstands what we mean by story, because I actually think of story as a packaging device, as a way of getting a message across that really connects with an audience. So there are times, I think, when you do need to be very direct and just give information. So if you're James Bond, Stefano, and I often think of you in this way, but if you're James Bond and you're at the end of the movie and you've got to disarm the nuclear device and you're on the phone to MI6 and you need to know whether to cut the blue wire or the red wire, you don't want them to say, now this is interesting, Stefano, because this actually happened 5 years ago. Can I just remind you, that's not the time for a story. Give me the damn information. But I think if you're like Simon Sinek and you're trying to sell the whole start with why thing, you can't just come on stage and say, look, it's very important that we don't just talk about what we do, we need to talk about why we do it and have a sense of purpose and connect in that way. Thank you very much. And then leave the stage, because that doesn't do justice to the idea. So I think you've got to bear in mind the circumstances as to whether it's right to read a line of poetry or to tell an anecdote or to just deliver a piece of information very directly.
I think you're completely right. And sometimes you do need to just get to the point. Although I will say, even in that James Bond situation, there might be a little bit of room for the tiniest story in the world, because if you need to persuade someone, they're not fully trusting of your expertise, you could say something along the lines of, last time somebody cut the blue wire, they blew everyone up and they all died. And then There's a little story. It's just powerful enough to make sure that nobody cuts the blue wire.
Yeah. Then you'd be like, okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, yeah. And then you give the instruction.
Can we just talk about why you're in this situation, James?
What do you think put you here, Mr. Bond? Do you think it would have been easier just to shoot people instead of trying to tie them up?
Yeah. Well, I'm here because the movie's got about 10 minutes to go, and this is where it usually ends. So.
Yeah. The budget was really big on this one, and we had to have a big end to these scenes. So.
Yeah, and I've got no one left to kill. So.
But I mean, those same executives, which apparently have short attention spans, I bet they still watch the movies. I bet they still, they're watching Breaking Bad or Downton Abbey or something. It's 12 o'clock at night. They say to their partner, "Should we just watch another one?" Because I want to know what happens. They're
not reading the executive summary.
Yeah. I remember when Game of Thrones was at its peak, I got asked to write a blog article for a business, an IT sales business, which can be deemed as not the most entertaining in the world. I used to work in IT sales, so I'm allowed to say that. So did you, Gary? It can be deemed as not the most entertaining in the world. But I had the trust of the company owner to play with it a little bit. And Game of Thrones was huge at that moment in time. So I related everything a little bit to Game of Thrones. And the response that article got, because they'd written articles before, but this was the first article I'd ever written, it exploded. And it wasn't because I had written about anything different that they were doing in terms of IT sales. It was because I wrote about Game of Thrones and people were interested in Game of Thrones. But not only did it, because I still attached it to a call to action, because I still got them to do something at the end. If I just told a story about Game of Thrones, that's useless. Because, of course, people are interested in Game of Thrones, but what does that do for your business? But I managed to link somehow, and you'll have to forgive me, I can't remember the exact way the scenario working, but somehow to some diabolical ending, I think in the Red Wedding, to how you could have a diabolical ending with your software unless you fix X, Y, and Z. And then that got people biting into the idea of, oh yeah, we do need this. So if you can attach stories, which you always can, it doesn't matter how tenuous the link is. If you can attach stories to what you're trying to put across, then you can get people to take action, I think. And more importantly, you get them on side and you get their buy-in and you get them to like your brand.
That's what you said before, wasn't it? About connecting and getting people intrigued and interested. Don't just start with, I think you said, don't start with buy my stuff, or it might be in a corporate environment, you need to do this, build the connection and the interest, and then at the end do X, Y, Z, whatever it is.
And I think sometimes there's a temptation to think, well, short attention span, I'll just deliver them the punchline, essentially, if you use a storytelling.
Yeah.
I'll just go straight to the punchline. But that doesn't work without all the stuff that's before it.
I think people have a short attention span for to get interested. If you can hook someone, then the attention span is there for as long as they're interested, I think. That's why, like, I'll watch a 5-10 minute video on LinkedIn, not that there are many, but if in the first few seconds I've just gone, this is for me, I'll watch it all. It's those first few seconds of they're talking to me and this is good and this is interesting, and you don't consciously think these things, but somewhere within you, you're thinking, this is worth my time to get to the end.
Yes. Ouch. Sorry, I was just doing the punchline to a man walked into a bar. But
I was just going to add that I think also we have to involve people in those stories, even when we're doing business or whatnot, get people's perspective also, so that they feel as though they're a part of the conversation. If you have them like the captive audience, then you sometimes can lose them. But if they feel that, well, oh yeah, I know what Andrew is saying, I'm a part of that, or Gary's, I think you'll hold their interest. And maybe when you give the punchline or call to action or whatever, you've won their, I think it's building relationship. So people buy or support who they like and trust. and building that relationship, I guess, enable people to see that you're not just after their money, but you're after their interest. Even though as business people, yes, we're after your money, but we're not telling you that.
And the kind of people I work with, the vast majority, or even organizations, the story is interwoven in what they do. What they do is their story. It's like there's a before old life, a big upheaval, a big tangled mess, and then emerging into a new thing, and then helping other people who are going through the same thing. That's massively oversimplifying it, but that model tends to fit people I work with. I was here, this happened, now I'm here. There's a real story there that is an integral part of, often it's the main reason for what they do now. It's not like I do my business and I'll tell you about my story. It's my story is my business.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Now, we talked a lot about the importance of stories in life and business, so maybe we can get back to seeing if anybody has another story they would like to share. Is anybody does anybody have something they would like to give us?
I thought I would like to read a little bit of mine. It's too long to read the whole thing, but just because of, and I wasn't actually going to. I thought it's kind of the conversation has sort of moved around, but into other areas. But I like just some of the stuff we've talked about, and like Sam said earlier, you said that you'll write a couple of lines and then you need to write a couple of pages, and I'm kind of wordy, I write a lot of words, and most of my rewriting is taking stuff out, so I'll be like, I'll have 1,000-word story that started out as 3,000, because it's just like constantly cleaning stuff away. Like, does it still say the same without this line? Is it helping? Do they need to know what color the cup was? Sometimes you do, but
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd read just a few lines really from something that I've written. It's more just about the kind of style that I'm trying to go for, which is having silences, and which is how can I get across what I want to say and build atmosphere and things with as few words as possible. That's what I try to go for. So, and it doesn't really matter about the context of it. I mean, just incidentally, a story that I wrote. I imagined how it would turn out, years down the line. So I'm just going to, and this was another example of that. What popped into my head was just someone singing "Happy Birthday," and I thought, well, I'll just start there and see what happens. So, and on the post, I did actually call this a first draft, but that's not strictly true. It was kind of a edited first draft, which as soon as something it's no longer.
It's just a white lie, Gary. That's okay.
Yeah, we forgive you, mate. It's fine.
It was a glaring fib. So anyway, 5 years later, happy birthday to you. Laurie took a deep breath and blew out the 3 candles on the chocolate cake that Laura had placed in front of him. Yay, happy birthday, sweetie. She leaned down and hugged Laurie tight, kissing his cheek. Paul reached over and ruffled the boy's hair. Happy birthday, champ. As Laura pulled away, Laurie beamed. Chocolate, she said. Okay, said Laura, coming right up. The candle blowing was merely a formality, you know that, said Paul. I know, he was just humouring us. Paul went over to the sink and reached for the cord hanging by the window. As the blind rolled up, summer afternoon sunlight flooded back into the room. Laura separated the 3 plates piled on the table and started cutting the cake. Laurie stood up on his chair, fingers splayed on the table either side of the cake. Chocolate, Mummy. Yes, I know, sweetie. Mummy? Uh-oh, said Paul, awkward question alert. Laurie said, how come? How has chocolate turns into a cake? Laura laughed. I honestly don't know, she said. Then at Laurie's frown, I'll show you. When this is finished, we'll make another one. And another, and, said Paul. Laura sat next to Laurie and Paul sat opposite them. They ate. This is good, said Paul. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. I mean, it's okay. It's my first attempt. Laura bit a big chunk, Then, with a mouthful, she said, "So, do I get a handshake? You'll need to ask the expert judge." Laura turned to her son. His face was smeared with butter icing, from within which he offered his mother a huge grin. Laura said, "Well, that's better than any handshake." So I'll leave it there. It's just a few lines.
Sweet.
So
It's that last line's powerful. Sorry.
I was just going to
Somebody
say,
else.
it's just kind of, it's like one thing there is I want to say what time of year it is. I want to say what time of day it is. And it's like, I don't just want to say that. So I sort of think, how can I say that? So if he goes to do the blind, then that tells. And it's just little things like that. But it's just like constant practice. But anyway, I'll shut up. Silence.
No, don't shut up.
It's great.
Yeah, it was a wonderful story, and also you make a really valid point. And we try and encourage as many people to share stories as possible, no matter what kind of level they think they're at, and often they're at a much better level than they actually think they are. But over time, you do then start to learn about refining your stories. As you say, you do start to learn about the questions of, well, how can I say something without saying it? How can I show it? How can I get people to come with me? But then, as you mentioned there's also the different styles of storytelling. You have the fast-paced poem that Yulia read earlier, or you have the slow, pointed silences that we had in yours and in Sharon's pieces, in Sharon's poems as well. And there's not one way to do things. So if you can get your point across the way that you want to get your point across, then all power to you. And I think you'll have an audience for that. And well, you know already, Gary, how much I love your writing. So keep doing it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Nice to see Alistair again, because
yes,
I remember Alistair from those dark COVID days when this was a little beacon of light in a in a dark period.
You're on mute, Alistair. I can see you speaking, but I can't hear you.
I have had so much trouble getting on board this evening, but I have been here since 7:20, listening in silence. But Andrew,
very nice.
I behind me is where I go for a bit of rest. Silence in the age of noise. And I just opened it randomly. I believe silence is the new luxury, writes Erling Kagg, who's been to the South Pole many times. Silence is more exclusive and long-lasting than any other luxury. I turn over to another page and it says, silence is about rediscovering through pausing the things that bring us joy. I turn over again. To compose poetry is about listening, says John Foss. And then, interestingly, there's a whole chapter on art, but the guy writes, if I can find it, a lot of silence can be found in the introduction to contemporary pop songs. And even Roth, is it? One of the great, is he German? I'm not quite sure. Artist. He said, looking at art, he said, when asked what is the meaning of art, sometimes silence is the best answer. And so in an MBA class, I've often tried to get an audience to stay totally silent for 30 seconds. Almost impossible. You have to prepare them, tell them what they're going to do, tell them to breathe, tell them to set aside everything, and then you tell them it's never been done. Are you going to be the first class to do this? And you get 36, Andrew, busy business people who go, why are we doing this? I've done it once. And they would agree, silence is very powerful once you've achieved it. Hey, there you go. So I enjoyed the chat about silence this evening.
I fully agree. Alistair, I think this time last year you shared that book and I read it. And then it inspired me to go on a 7-day silent retreat. So last June, I went into the the pre-Alps of Italy. Stefano dropped me off and went on his merry way for 7 days. And it was the most incredible experience of my life. And I could have stayed another 7 days.
You just reminded me of something because this happened so long ago. It was filed very far away. But when I was about 24 years old, I had a problem with my voice. I had a polyp on my vocal cord. And the doctor told me that unless I wanted to have it scraped, that the only thing I could do was be quiet for 3 months. And so I had to do my whole job, my office job, by writing everything down or typing everything. And I didn't speak at home. I didn't order in restaurants. I wrote everything down. And it was hard at first, but the weird thing was once I got used to it, I had an assistant and everything worked pretty well. But when my 3 months were up, I actually was kind of bummed out to have to go back to talking because I really had enjoyed not having to talk and just being able to say, I'll have a ham sandwich and hand it to the cashier, even though people thought it was super weird. But and then they would ask me what's wrong, and I'd say I can't talk. My voice is broken.
Hey.
But
and I'm sorry to bring that book up again, but people ask me all the time, what are your favorite books? And I have 5 behind me that are my go-to books every single time on innovation, creative thinking, etc., followed by more. But there's the ones that I just love.
There's a book I'll mention, Alistair. It's on a related theme to this. It's not the same thing, but it is related. It's a book by Sherry Turkle. Now, it's not Turtle with a T, it's Turtle with a K. And she's an American academic, and she's done a lot of research around the effect that the use of digital technology has had on children. And it's called Reclaiming Conversation. And she's interviewed many, many kids, parents, teachers, and so forth. And what she's found is that a lot of the kids are afraid of conversation, live conversation, because it's all done in real time. And therefore they can't edit what they're going to say, which they would normally be doing with their thumbs. So there's maybe a lack of improvisation that's developed. But also she's noted that they're very afraid of dips in activity or stimulation. So if they ever get bored, then they'll go straight to their phone. If they're sitting in a lecture or they're sitting in a class, they'll go to their phone. If there's a dip in their interest, they have to fill it with something. So she says that a lot of professors now in the States are actually encouraging their students to daydream, which I used to get told off for doing that in class. But this is what is lacking now. In other words, they're not doing anything.
I tell you, I use a photograph of a young girl gazing out the window, almost in impressionist style, and say to your busy business audiences, gaze out the window. During COVID, my wife would say to me, what are you doing? I said, I'm working. She said, no, you're gazing out the window. It's like the 2 guys sitting on a park bench, and his wife said to him, what are you doing? He said, I'm sitting on a park bench. Or no, sorry, I'm sitting on a bench thinking. She said, you did that yesterday. He said, I haven't finished.
Very good.
And this whole gazing, I was chatting to a company in Bedford Street in Belfast, MCS. They have it's one of the biggest employers, biggest recruitment companies in the city. And they're Louise, who owns it, and her Mark, they come around here. We have coffee conversations in my garden is how we have strategy meetings. And she said, it's not just children. When they hire new starts, they used to train them for 3 weeks. Now they have to train them for 6 because they can't lift a phone. They can't have a conversation. They can't ring someone and say, I've got a great engineer for you. They cannot communicate in sentences, write emails, use pronunciation and commas and stuff. And so it's a problem across the generations, but certainly I think across the under 30s with my huge apologies to all of you who are under 30.
Under
I'd like
twice.
to pretend that apology was aimed at me, Alistair, but sadly it's not.
But you know,
But yeah,
Alistair,
I mean-
my daughter last night, she showed me on her phone, I think it was TikTok or Instagram or something. It was a clip of some school children in the UK being interviewed by the BBC in their classroom in the 1970s. And the way they spoke was so different to the way kids speak now, because it was much more precise. Their pronunciation was really clear. You could hear every word. There wasn't a lot of likes and sort of slovenliness in the way that language is used. And I know I probably sound like a grumpy old bloke, but it almost reminded me of what's lost in the way that people communicate now. It sounded very odd, but it sounded like adults or professional people speaking.
I love reading novels written in the 50s and the 60s. The language is so glorious. And in fact, if anybody feels like reading Tom Brown's School Days, you almost have to dig into your medieval or early 18th century English to understand what's going on. As he jumps on the haste at 0600, as the Pinks are standing by the corner drinking tea. The Pinks being the guys in pink jackets made by Thomas Pink, who are the ostlers for the horses, but he just calls them the Pinks because that's what they're called. But who ever uses that expression now? Oh, look, let's go and stand by the Pinks. I mean, is that a bunch of flowers? And so I'm currently coaching a group of students 2 hours a month in how to have a conversation.
Wow.
It's a valuable resource, but incredible that it's needed.
It's a shame that I was like needed, and I was like chatting to them, and I was like, as Andrew knows, use of English is changing, not in a good way.
Although I would say there are some elements that I like, and also or some changes that I like, I guess, in the way that the use of language is portrayed. So maybe not necessarily the changes that are happening in terms of the way people are actually speaking, but in terms of the changes that are happening in terms of the way that people who speak differently are broadcast. And by that I mean it's not all BBC English. It's not all people speaking with a posh accent. It's not all people who have a very rigid, maybe, way of expressing themselves. Instead, in the UK, we now hear people from the north of England. We hear people from Northern Ireland. We hear people from Scotland. We hear people from Wales, which we never used to hear quite as much. So that element of the evolution of language, I like. Not putting ly at the end of words when it should be there, or putting it where it shouldn't, I dislike.
Is that your is that a privately point of view?
I haven't heard that one.
Please don't do that to me, Alistair, please.
That's weird.
Certainly there's a preponderance of Scots accents, and I quite like that. There's a lot of northern and regional accents, super for that. I do enjoy listening to Sarah Smith in Americast on a Friday night, whatever time that's on. You get 30 minutes of American politics squeezed in.
John Smith's daughter.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Who was Labour leader, sadly died of a heart attack, I think.
And she left the UK because the vitriol on her Twitter feed was more than she could bear. And I think that's the sad thing, that we just feel online we can yell at people instead of having a conversation with them.
But I agree with Stefano. But I don't think we're talking about the same thing. I don't think we are saying that, that old BBC received pronunciation way of communicating is what we have to have across the board. Not at all. But I think what Alistair's saying is that, and I hear the same thing, a lot of employers say that people coming out of university aren't confident to hold a conversation or to use the telephone.
Yeah. And one engineering company hired a guy with a master's degree, and after a month they had to stop him sending emails to people because they were badly constructed, inadequately constructed. So they sent him on a 6-week literacy course, which he failed, and they had to let him go.
Oh my!
That is mind-boggling.
And that's a guy with a master's degree in mathematics, if you like, and engineering, because somewhere along the line we've lapsed, whatever that means, and therefore reading, if we read good stuff, maybe that helps our structure.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I agree. It's not the same thing at all to say that we need to spread the BBC, or we need to take away the BBC English, and just having the power to be able to communicate, to be able to interact in, and again, this comes across in a lot of written word as well. There are poets, for example, who purposefully leave out punctuation and grammar so that you can get the rhythm of their poetry. But there are also people who write who don't know where to put the right punctuation, or don't know where to add a paragraph, or should there be a, I can't even think of anything in particular now, but if you can't construe the point you're making with punctuation, then the person on the other end isn't going to understand it. And if the person on the other end doesn't understand it, then your point gets lost. And I'm guessing that's what's happened with this mathematics major, that they were able to do their engineering job, or their work that involved that side of things. But if their part of their job is to communicate and they can't do it, then, well, I wouldn't hire them either. So,
hey up there, Stefano. Hey up. I was chatting to.
Sorry, what was that meant to be? I'm trying to work out. Was that Texan or?
Hey up, hey. Here I'm sitting bar tat, hey.
God, I forgot.
I think only Andrew and I are even connected.
Well, I'm a Yorkshireman, so I do recognise that.
I recognise it too.
I was chatting to a solicitor and I said, hey, have you retired? And she said, no. Are you cutting back? I'm working longer hours than before. I cannot get law graduates who can write well.
Wow.
And those are people who understand sentences, the importance of a colon, a comma, and a full stop in making meaning with every single phrase. And but we are not here to have a good old bash at the universities that young people today.
Oh, the youth of today, honestly.
I personally love them all. So on that note, you're right, Alistair. We're not here to have a bash at anybody. So why don't we instead share another story? Is there anybody who has something they would like to read or to put out there that they think might tickle our taste buds a little?
I have a very short, silly piece. It's like maybe 5 sentences long, but it is extracted from my diary from January 25th, 2021. And it's called Frozen Ponds and Jello Molds. Are we familiar with a Jello mold?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
okay. The pond near our house was frozen this afternoon when we walked by. I took a close look because the texture was beautiful. It reminded me of etched frosted glass. The way the twigs and the leaves were suspended in the green ice made me think of a Jello mold. Remember those? Who decided we need fruit, or more horrifyingly, vegetables or meat suspended in gelatin? Jello salad, anyone? Romaine lettuce and perhaps pineapple trapped in green goop. Sure, the French have their fancy terrines and stuff in aspic, which are equally gross. But Jello molds brought the horror of gelatinous yet savory foods into the mainstream. I could write a whole essay on Jello molds and how bizarre they are. However, I will save that for another day. Perhaps I can pair that essay with a piece about green goddess dressing or ambrosia. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you were definitely born after 1970.
Very good.
My report that is Sherry Trifle, 1964.
Oh, yeah.
Jelly with cake and bits of chopped up tinned peach sent over from Canada after the war. That was pièce de résistance then, eh? High living in the 60s.
Peak dessert. Love
Pleased
it.
to say I've never had it.
You're all youngsters, let me assure you.
No, it's a brilliant story though, John. And I completely agree with your sentiment. The idea, just the idea of it.
It's just wrong. It's just. I'm actually really fascinated, though. I've been just reading these recipes lately, just pulling these recipes to read, because they do the strangest things. They'll take like, lime gelatin, but then they'll put, vegetables in the lime gelatin. So like it makes no sense. It's sweet and savory. Is it dessert? Is it like, I don't know. I think there was experimentation with drugs going on when they were making recipes.
Oh, that's what absinthe does. And there's a restaurant in Belfast that reproduces the grand meal served on the Titanic about 5 hours before the ice incident.
Wow.
The ice incident.
Which ice
We do like to
incident was that,
downplay things in
Alistair?
Northern Ireland.
What?
Which ice incident was that?
Oh, almost. It's long forgotten.
I think
Very
somebody put a bit
remembered.
too much ice in somebody else's drink. I think that was.
Can I have a large ice cube with that? But they serve the entire meal with aspic, and there are dishes of aspic, glasses of absinthe, and roast quail, along with all the other stuff. So you might like to look at their restaurant, but I've forgotten the name of it. It's somewhere.
I'll have a look for it. That's
thinking awesome. Of aspic and things we put in jelly.
Yes, suspended. Why?
I think
if that
restaurant sank without a trace, Alistair. It's not there
anymore. Oh no, we're not going down this road.
You guys ever do want to see something really funny? You can look on YouTube there's a sketch that this guy Bowen Yang does where he portrays the iceberg that sank the Titanic, but he's giving a little like sort of editorial piece on the news and explaining how he's really the victim here in this whole situation. And it is so clever. And he's
there I was minding my own business, just floating.
Exactly. Here I was, I'm sitting here, I'm just chilling, like all this stuff. It's very, very funny. You should really look it up. I can't do it justice.
I still like
thank you for the Turkle. Thank you for that reclaiming conversation comment, because it's much needed.
That's fascinating to me. Because I mean, don't you guys remember as kids, sort of parents or teachers or people in sort of authority positions coaching you sort of how to have a conversation, or what the etiquette is in a situation, or prompting you say thank you, or ask how was your day. Like there was so much of that growing up. I can still hear my mother's voice in my head.
Yeah, just basic stuff.
The average child in the UK is spending up to the average is spending 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
Using thumbs.
Yeah.
And a local doctor has some patients with early onset arthritis in their thumbs.
Oh, geez.
For doing that.
I can imagine that. Sorry, Gary, you were about to say something as well there, I think.
Well, it was just what John was saying. I was thinking, like, to me, that was just basic stuff that you didn't even question. It was just taken for granted. That part of being a kid is having to learn basic manners and etiquette and conversation stuff.
How to answer the phone.
Yeah.
Answer the phone?
I mean, I think.
Well, to be fair, that depends. That's evolved too. I think I remember my mum always answering the phone with our phone number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, the point that Sherry Turkle makes is that kids are probably communicating more than ever before, but not verbally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was taught to answer the phone with "He's not in."
Down the pub.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Because that doesn't work anymore.
No, you can't answer a mobile phone and say he's not in.
It's now plugged into it on a plasma drip. You can answer the phone in your sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, just blink
You
your
have
eyes.
the option. At least you have the option now to say that, oh, the signal's going, which you couldn't really do with a landline.
Yeah.
So
No.
you've got a bit more flexibility, I guess, in that sense.
I was listening to something the other night with headphones on my phone, just some music, and then the volume suddenly dropped. And I looked, because usually it does that if there's a notification comes through or something. And there was a message on my phone that it was basically saying, "You've had this too loud for too long. I'm turning it down."
Yes, it does that.
Wow.
And it was just like, okay, I think you need to remember that you're my phone.
Wow.
Right?
Gary, that sounds a lot like Janice's story from the other day. It's coming to life. For those who don't know, for anybody who hasn't seen Janice's story, she wrote about a device speaking to her without her speaking to it first, and it just started giving her quite good advice. Actually, it was quite useful, some of the things that it was saying, but it wasn't asked for.
And it's just like,
so there was this dichotomy of, do I panic and go, the robots are taking over, or do I actually take advantage of it and make use of the device?
Yes, Alexa, whatever you say.
But isn't that what partners are for, to get advice that you didn't ask for?
Yeah.
Ever.
Dangerous ground, Andrew.
On that note,
it's like walking past Sainsbury's, and my phone will say, "What did you think of Sainsbury's?" Oh, well, it's all right. Looks fine. It's still there.
Haven't changed much in a lot. On that note, though, I think at least for our YouTube viewers, we should maybe let them head off to their beds soon. But before we do, does anybody have anything they desperately need to read before we say our goodbyes, or they desperately need to put out there before we don't stop the fire burning, because it's going to keep going, but we stop it burning directly in the center of us.
Yeah, just to tell those people who are watching on YouTube, you've seen enough. I think that's enough screen time. Maybe you should switch off now.
Just yet. Wait till we hang up.
Switch off. Stare out of the window and don't say anything.
Everything I've just said is fake news and has just been overdubbed by AI.
This is really AI. He's computer generated.
Totally.
Yeah, it's all been fact checked by Dominic Cummings and shown to be.
I think we're all delirious. I guess that's a no to stories. Okay, in that case, from the only two genuine people in the call, we would like to say thank you very much to everybody who's watching. It has been
always super inspired by all your stories, and we look forward to it again next year.
Year 7 it will be 2025, and we hope you'll all come back with lots of enthusiasm and lots of stories to share.
Well, thank you for doing it, for putting it on, both of you.
Yes, thank you.
Huge pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
This was amazing.
Lovely to see you all.
Great meeting everybody.
So
thank you all.
Thank you all.
Before you go,
we will, as always, end with a story.
I'm not sure I understood what people meant when they talked about a person's aura until that day. Of course, there were people that I got on with well and people that I didn't. Sometimes I'd click with someone without a word being spoken, and sometimes it took a while to warm to an individual's characteristics and complexities. Yet none of that shouted aura to me. Charisma, personality, mutual understanding, maybe. Aura? Not really. Yet, as my foot touched the pristine sand and my body carried me towards, but not into, the salty water, I felt it. To my right, the cow kept itself to itself. To my left, the humans stretched. At my feet, The grains of powder beckoned me to rest my legs, then my back, my neck, and my head. I lay, staring at the one white cloud that transformed from a sheep to an amused goat, to the cow that still stood to my right, and finally to nothing as I closed my eyes and dreamt of the dream world I had immersed myself in when I was still conscious. I squinted. The yellow light radiating from the sky above had shone its spotlight on me in an attempt to pull me from my slumber. As I slowly peeled the lids from the whites of my eyes, they guided me in the direction of two sleeping dogs. One had curled up by my feet. The other tucked itself into a crease of skin on my left side. Leaving the sleeping dogs lie, I finally understood the meaning of the word aura. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.